If you want to know how Pennywise lived on after the events of it, then stick around to the end of this video. Hello and welcome to Horror History. My name is Professor Schweld, also known as Shaggy, also known as Emo Abraham Lincoln, and in today's lesson, we LLB discussing one of Stephen King's most iconic monsters, also known as the Deadlights, also known as Robert Gray. Causing some to believe that the events of the 1986 novel actually happened, Stephen King hasn't really gone on the record about his inspirations for it. On the other hand, actual intelligent people drew comparisons to a serial killer John Wayne Gacy, a birthday clown in Chicago during the 1970s, who did unspeakable things to more. Pennywise in the movies is depicted as one of the forms of a shape-shifting creature known than 30 victims. He would later stash the kids in the crawl space of his basement. Not so different than Pennywise's penchant for dragging his victims' corpses into the sewers below Derry Mine, as it too resided in a lair at the bottom Derry's sewage system for hundreds of years. But in the novel, it is much more than that. So let's travel back to the inception of it, over 1 billion years ago. Horror history. In the beginning there was an endless void known as the which was inhabited only by a celestial force referred to as the Other. The Other created 2 additional inhabitants of the Macroverse, one protector called Maturin the Turtle, and one shape-shifting entity called the Deadlight. The 2 would become natural enemies. The Turtle was kind and all-knowing, but did not like to involve itself in any conflicts. So everything you're sitting in right now, that's actually Earth was basically like a buffet for it, because humans have much more complex imaginations. Everything you've eaten today. At some point, the turtle came out of its shell with a stomachache and vomited out. The impact scared away the animal inhabitants, such as antelope, fish, bats, and others. The impact also sent it into a deep sleep, possibly aided by the fact that it became, and so stayed hidden in its shell most often. Our universe. I think you get the idea. These incidents would often go unrecorded in Derry's history books, but that hasn't, and I'll feast on your flesh as I feed on your fear. The earliest known victims of it were a party of 340 settlers called the Derry Company. Speaking of which, its main form of sustenance is fear. I'll take all of you. They started to create a civilization along the Kenduskeag River, and Derry Township became because of that fact. It traveled to our universe to look for food, much like how I may travel to Taco Bell when I'm done filming this. A picture from Will Hanlon's album dated to the 1700s shows a funny-looking man juggling a couple thousand or possibly even million years ago. It discovered Earth than any species it had discovered before. Specifically, the imaginations of human children were especially attractive to it because they were capable of an unprecedented level of fear. It arrived on Earth as a fiery, meteoric object that crashed into the land in North America that would one day become known as the Barrens in Derry, Maine. The impact crater was devastating, but the area would be taken back by trees and wildlife over the years. John poisoned his entire family, then killed himself with a white nightshade mushroom. But what it does do is instill fear into everyone involved, making them more delicious meals. In 1856, the clown's image appears in a political cartoon. Amongst some drunken luggers, this illustration seems to predict the next cycle, which begins in 1877, when 4 separate trapped in the Ice Age. In the year 1715, it would thaw out and arise from this slumber, thus marking the beginning of the cycle that would repeat roughly every 27 years, where it would awaken to feed on the fear of Derry's residents. Not too different than how some mammals may eat and then go into hibernation during the winter. The next cycle was especially bloody, stopped locals from doing their own research. Full rules can be found in the video description. Named after the town in Ireland from which they hailed, a logging town. Still is, am I right, boys? In 1743, every single settler disappeared without trace or explanation. But first, there was a major incident that took place shortly after its reawakening the entire camp. There were rumors of Indians, but no sign of an attack. To enter, make sure you're following CSS WORLD on Instagram and like this post. The town was left deserted, other than one single house that burned down on the same spot where Georgie Denbrough would be killed 300 years later. I'm guessing all of these settlers were eaten by it, because she had taken such a long nap after crashing on Earth, and probably woke up especially hungry. After Haru's arrest, they dragged him out of his jail cell and lynched him on the butt. Haru, in an act of revenge, took an axe to a bar called the Silver Dollar. Shortly after Derry Township was the town was re-established and the canal was built for easy access to the Kenduskeag River. but their strong unity ends up working as an advantage to them. It seems to be about this time that it starts experimenting with using the form of a clown. One witness mentioned there was a guy there doing tricks and flips, who he assumed was new in town, but noted that he seemed to stick around after that. Now, sometimes when you've just eaten tacos, you're a little hungry still, and you say, bowling pins on the street near the canal. He wasn't wearing makeup, but did have the recognizable tufts of hair. It has the ability to divide people and turn them against each other. The next known event is in 1851, which is for 27-year cycles. After the disappearance in 1906, an unexplained slew of animal mutilations takes place. Of the settlers, it targeted a man named John Markson, likely using the power of the deadlights to possess him and do his bidding. It seems that humans who look directly into the deadlights are put into a trance-like state, where they can be controlled by it. Keep in mind that having someone else do its bidding doesn't benefit it directly. It's basically the equivalent of putting those little sauce packets on your taco. At a bar, lynchings took place in town and carries into 1879. Derry's logging business was really booming at that time, and a group of lumberjacks stumbled across another group, finding them completely hacked to pieces. Like a bear coming out of hibernation, it would continue to come out every 27 years, or so, to cause mayhem and feed on the fear of the residents of Derry. Coming up next, we'll go into the horrifying archives produced by it in the early 1900s. I had a ton of people participate in the last giveaway, and since you were all so excited about that one, why not just do another giveaway? This time, you'll float too, because the winner will be taking home this float. Merchandise. Winner will be chosen at random. In 1891, an ironworks is built in Derry by the Kitchener family, and an article about the opening of this facility is featured in the paper. The front page photograph shows a crowd gathering to celebrate the cutting of the ribbon, and off the left of the crowd, a clown can be seen celebrating with a hand. This would be a precursor to one of Derry's deadliest events that took place at the end of this cycle. In September of 1905, the logging business in Derry had become big enough that people started to organize unions. One of these organizers was named Claude Haroux. He and 3 colleagues were staying in a hotel in Derry, and during this stay, the colleagues turned up dead in the Kenduskeag River with missing body parts and the word union pasted on each of their backs. It is unclear if this was the result of Pennywise's actions, or if it was legitimately just unhappy workers, and took out the loggers he thought were responsible. That night, the townspeople rioted side of town. This highlights one of the major strengths of Pennywise, other than fabulous gymnastic skills. It would later attempt to use this tactic on the Loser S Club, after Eddie Casbrook suffers a broken arm. But before we get there, there's a lot more of Pennywise's history in Derry to cover. These are most likely also connected to it. You know what? I'm gonna grab a big burrito, maybe some nachos, and a large soft drink for the road.